Hello.
Hello, Cahill.
I went for the jersey outfit today. The OpenSSF jersey is
There you
my look
go.
right now. It's mildly garish. It's great.
That's lovely. I got the purple to match.
My favorite color.
There we go. Yeah, this camera zooms and weird. Like when I'm on Zoom, it's super zoomed. When I'm on Google Meets, it's like super out.
It's always
Just,
like, man, what's my computer doing today?
I bought a new one and I don't know, because my cat like ate the cable for the other one, so I broke. I just, I'm not satisfied with this one.
And Dr. Eden, is that how I'm pronouncing Eden Renee? Is that how your name's pronounced?
Yes, Eden Renee.
Awesome. Nice to meet you. Thanks for joining us.
You as well.
This one's a pretty casual, like we ask questions, we go through things, but we've been trying to do more and more with our belonging, empowerment, allyship, and representation. Haha, I got the words group.
Ooh, makes me think.
I
Wait,
know.
you're muted.
It is my favorite new acronym for DEI.
Let's just sneak this one in over here so, so
It
people can
was
join.
it was a nice team effort to come up. First, we started with beer.
Like, yeah, the beer group. Yeah, that'll work.
The beer group. Then we had to go along with the geese. Yeah.
Yeah, we just do a pretty casual conversation. I just ask a few questions as we go through, go back and forth about what people's backgrounds are. Thank you for your email back that I didn't get back to you because it was one of those days yesterday where I said,
No worries at all.
but no, we're on the same page entirely on that. I was, yeah. Where are you based out of, by the way?
You're,
I'm in the Boston area.
Nice.
when just a bunch of early risers.
Hi everyone, how are you doing?
Hey,
Hey,
Prince.
Okay,
Prince.
Good.
I heard something about the Boston area as I came in. I heard
Here's
something about that and I came. What's happening in the Boston area? What's going on?
Eden Renee is in the Boston area.
Okay, what part of Boston?
Metro West, close to Framingham and Natick. I'm in Wayland.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, I don't talk to when I left New York City, I came up to Massachusetts and Boston, and when I came up to Boston, I didn't know about the Western. I knew about Roxbury, Mattapan, Dorchester. I knew Jamaica Plain. I knew about all that. I didn't know about the Nate, and I knew Natick and Framingham and all that. I didn't know that there was an actual term for that. What do you call it? Western what?
Metro West, that Natick,
Metro West. Yeah.
Framingham, and then all the W's that are in this area.
Okay.
Wellesley, Wayland, Weston. There might be some more. But it's Metro West Boston.
Yeah, I did my second half of high school in Belmont. That was when they bust me out to school then. Yeah, had to get bussed out. So I left New York, came up there, and then got bused to school when they had buses, and I had to take the bus myself to school. Good times.
Good times.
Yeah, the bus comes through the door, so I told the kids they have to take the bus.
Like it's right there. It's right there. You can't nod.
Think we're just waiting for one more speaker.
All right, yeah. See, do we have our full crew for this one now? Let's see.
Yes, we should.
you want to kick us off on office hours ramble and then preamble, and I'll jump in.
All right, cool. Well, welcome everyone. This is the community office hours that we do once a month. Each month is a different topic focused on creating safe spaces, helping provide information to our community as far as breaking into open source, tech, AI, security, and so forth. If you have any ideas or any topics you want to cover, if you want to speak, please let us know. Reach out on Slack via email and whatnot. And today we have a very awesome topic celebrating Black History Month, and we'll be hearing from various speakers in the industry. Over to you, Kahil.
Hi, my name is Kahil White. I'm a TPM here over at the Linux Foundation. I am a giant nerd, of course, but also at my previous company I worked at, I helped get a Black employees resource group. So something dear and close to my heart as well. And I am honored to be the moderator for this session here. So I'll be asking a few casual questions. We go back and forth. Office hours are pretty informal for a question-based situation, but we talk through and then we will open it up to the audience for any additional questions. So I am going to start by having my panel introduce themselves, and I think I'll have to throw Jay in for my first person to talk about. Introduce himself, and yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself, Jay.
Sure. So Jay White, I've been involved with the OpenSSF now for this would be 3 years. Lot of work. I'm on the TAC now, which has been nice. I chair chair and co-chair a few working groups and special interest groups and projects in the OpenSSF, which is nice too. I also sit on the board of OSS Open, which is another open source organization dealing with standards. But as a day job, I work at Microsoft. So I'm a security principal program manager at Microsoft in the Azure office of the CTO. And I'd love to tell you what my exact function is, but I do so much that not even my team really understands the breadth of of what I do. We go through a weekly conversation about what impact is according to who we're entertaining that particular week. I don't know. I shrug. Also, I hold about 10 different industry certifications in health, fitness, and sports nutrition. So my couple of my passion work is in helping people through health, fitness, and wellness. So I do that as a side gig as well. Let's see. I'm Black.
I've noticed.
Right. But born in Dominican Republic, raised in New York City, and then of course in Boston. So I have the wonderful pleasure of having lived the Latin experience, the Black experience, and then the white experience. I said I got bussed out to schools, and I guess when we get into the question and answer period, if I was making a joke the other day. I said that my journey is a love story, and it really is. I have to explain that further later on. But that's me in a nutshell. I'll stop there.
Probably shouldn't have had Jay go first. He keeps telling me things. I always keep learning new things. But thank you for joining us. Dr. Eden Renee, could I have you speak next on your background and a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Again, I'm Dr. Eden Renee or Dr. E. All of those are totally fine with me. Sorry, I just felt like making it rhyme for some reason. But basically, I feel a little black sheepish here because I am not in cybersecurity or working for, it's a big cool tech firm. And I'm an independent consultant in the DEI field, diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is, of course, now a bad, dirty word, and that we have to be thinking differently about because of the misinformation about it. I can explain best what DEI is via my TED Talk on Star Wars and DEI, which I thought was pretty fun. It was definitely super fun to do. If you Google Yoda DEI, it'll pop right up. So let's see, got a little laugh there. Thanks. Let's see, my background, I have a PhD in social psychology, which has to do with the interaction between the person and the situation. So my specialization in it, as you can expect, is DEI. I was a professor for a long time, and now as an independent consultant, I helped various corporations, big and small, with how it is that they can do a better job by having the humans thrive in the workplace, especially with talent acquisition and really just the things they need to do in order to keep their employees longer.
That's awesome. And as someone who listens to at least one Star Wars podcast, I am going to Google that definitely because that's right up my alley. And then I'm going to throw it over to our last speaker. I have not actually pronounced your name yet. So can you please pronounce your name so I don't butcher it? Because I know how that goes. And I still have you on mute if you're speaking. Let me see. Well, while I work for you to get unmuted and I can keep moving on to other things, give me a slack on that one. Yes, and you can ping them on the background and work on that. Thank you. So yeah, speaking of coming into tech via different ways, like yeah, myself as well. I am a program manager here at the Linux Foundation, but I came into the Linux Foundation and security through a very weird route. I have a background in working in large-scale consumer events. I used to run a very large-scale video game convention in Boston for a long time, so that's my Boston background situation. I know that, yeah, that's why I used to be over there. And then I worked across in various video gaming spaces and project roles. But actually, oddly enough, at the last company I worked at, I ended up on there. They built a global security council, and that was mainly for PhysSec stuff in general because I was on their events team doing stuff out in person outside. But it exposed me to their internal security, other stuff too as well, and that was very interesting. So also another one not entirely from like tech background. Oh, your video is up and I can hear your audio typing. So I'm going to throw it over to you. How do you pronounce your name?
Oh, yeah. So I didn't even realize you're talking to me. Like I've been here all along. So my name is Okafor. Chineye Okafor. Yeah. Nobody gets my name in Purdue anyways. I'm a third year PhD student in Purdue University, and I'm part of the Trustworthy Software Ecosystems Lab, where what we do is to build an understanding of the security postures of open source and then build tools to improve security. I mean, we are familiar with projects like Sixtor, Intoto, Guac, and many more.
Awesome. And since I have you going away, Janae, tell me a little bit about how did you get into this field? Like, what's your journey? How did you get started in this?
I started from, wow, long story. Okay, from my undergrad.
What's your origin story? Is what I like to ask people.
Mine is not a love story, but it's a story. So I think I went through the traditional routes, like undergrad, do your internships. So I did my internship in technical support. Then afterwards, I went into application management. Then I started like, knowing, like contributing to open source through outreach. Like before then, I just use open source tools. I mean, they're free. And so I just use them. I never really like contributed or anything. Then through outreach, like part of the application process is to contribute to some open source projects. So that's when I got exposed to open source. Then open source security was like in grad school when I started working on software supply chain security projects. So that's
awesome.
Like some.
And Dr. E, how did you get started like working in DEI work? Like how did that come about?
Oh gosh, I think I can relate to Jay and just having a very big history with jumping around to living in different places. And so when I was young, I lived in Arkansas. That's where I was born. I was raised in California. I went to boarding school. I went to college in Connecticut. My graduate degree comes from Tulane, so like New Orleans, Louisiana. Postdoc at Penn State. First tenure track job was in Massachusetts, but the other side of the state from where I live now. So, but this is where I've lived the longest in Massachusetts in general. But all of that basically led to different thoughts and ideas around, just different communities, different people, different accents, different mindsets, just different everything. And that just opened my mind to being able to see that more readily, and also realize that there's a whole lot of humans out here who don't think the same way, and that's beautiful. But then I see so many different things that are being pushed to us, that are more biased, like that this group of people is like that, so like Black people are dumb and Asian people are smart and blondes are stupid, and like all of these different things, and that just hurts my heart. So for me, I dedicated my work in getting a PhD, being a professor, on trying to undo as much of that as possible. And that led to me being in administration for colleges, because I realized how much greater of an impact I can have doing that. I also was the board chair of a nonprofit that did the same work. And of course, with George Floyd's murder, it led to a lot more consulting work for me. So that's when I went legit and eventually decided to go ahead and leave academia and just focus just on independent consulting. So I was very happy that I took the bet on myself in that way. It definitely led to that fun TED talk that y'all will watch later. But it just means that I've had a lot of different experiences and seen so many different ways of thought and being, and that just makes it so that it's even easier for me to do my job, because it's experience based as well as research based.
That's incredible. Like I joke that I've lived on 3 different coasts since like I've been all over the place situationally, but by moving around and being other places, that's like you learn so much from other people. Like it's the name of the game is intersectionality, and just in general, and that's
Yes,
how it
yes,
works out.
definitely. I joke that I've lived in every mainland US time zone, which I have.
Yeah. That I'm missing a couple of them, but like I did Australia for one really weird year, so it's okay. Jay, now it's time. Your origin story of sneaking into cybersecurity.
Well, so Vic asked me, a question in the chat, and made it and asked it based on locations. I guess if I was to give an origin story, I would say it boils down to experiences rather than locations. Um, let's see. I grew up I grew up on the street. All right. So my journey into cyber, I was information security. I say information security as the foundation. Cybersecurity is just the foundation of the larger information security. But I was information security before it was sexy. Now I say that um, because growing up, how I grew up, you had to be aware of certain things, right? And I say it's experiences because in DR, I experienced, uh, I had certain experience that lent itself to me being able to survive in New York, which lent itself to experiences being able to survive in Boston when I was in Boston. Now, um, you had South End and you had the North End, and you had the Italians in one part and you had the Irish in the other. You know where you could go, when you could go, how you could go. That was Boston. I'm gonna work backwards here. In New York, you had everything above 96th Street. That was your stopping point. You get down below 96th Street, understand you are not welcome. So you understand, there's certain things you understand. Also, because this now, once again, experiences. I still had a bit of an accent back then. This was early on when my grammar was still a little different. Um, but because of how I look, I can cross Adam Powell. You understand what I'm saying? Now, if you're from New York City, you understand what I'm talking about. You had one Harlem, you had another Harlem, right? You had two different areas. So I could go across to Black Harlem and be readily accepted. But then when I came over to Spanish Harlem, my grammar was readily accepted. So then you understood that to that part as well. You also understood the different dynamics. So all of that led me to have an understanding of um, risk assessments, how to conduct a risk assessment in real time. Now, I wouldn't draw those connections until I got into the military. Um, Before I got into the military, of course, I started school. In school, I was a marketing major first, until I took my first computer class. And that's when I got into binary and ones and zeros. And I fell in love. Like I said, this is a love story, people. I promise you, when I'm done, you'll understand, say, oh, all right. So ones and zeros. And I was like, man, this ones and zeros stuff is cool. But of course, I didn't have enough money to stay in school, so I had to leave school. And of course, that's how I got into the military. But the stuff I learned about conducting risk assessments, I didn't know at the time were risk assessments until I got in the military and heard the term risk assessment. And then when the risk assessment was explained to me, I said, oh hell, I know what the hell this is. I'm very familiar with this.
Run this constantly.
And I became a beast. And then they sent me to battle staff. They sent me to all kinds of schools because I was like, oh my God, Pathfinder. They were wondering how I was able to find my way through the woods and through everything. I was like, what are you talking about? At nighttime, the star is right there. I don't know what you guys are looking at. These trees, it was this simple stuff because I grew up in like I said, this is a love story. Because I grew up in the projects. When I was trucking through the woods, people would look at me like people who didn't know. The instructors understood and they said, dude, you are like an idiot savant with this. I would weave in and out of the trees in the woods, and other people were like, why are you weaving in and out of trees? Man, that's the only way you can walk in a straight line in the woods. I don't know what the hell you guys are doing, but if you always walk to the left of the trees, guess what? You're going to be walking to the left of everything. Weave in and out. The instructors was like, I don't understand how you said, because in the projects, if you the only way you know where you're going is to go in between and weaving in and out of the buildings. You know this building over here, you know this building over there. They all look the same. Anyway, I digress. I'm giving you a well-rounded story. Anyway, so getting into finally when I got back to school, I was like, what do I want to study that's going to allow me to have a job when I get out of here? Because of course, when I joined the military, I was in infantry. I was a grunt, and of course, I was a short tab, and I went to Ranger school and all that, and did all that kind of stuff. And that stuff is you have a short. Sometimes you can have a longer career or a shorter career depending upon how funky you get. And we got a little funky. Anyway, what could I do when I'm done? And so I love the ones and zeros, so I started with software engineering. And while I was studying software engineering, I know I was earning a degree in that, and then I read in software engineering something about error checking. And I said, error checking, why would you do error checking? And of course, at that time, I had already began information security and information assurance training with the DoD. So then I read that again in the books. I said, and I started drawing the parallels, following the bouncing ball. And then I just said, well, I'm gonna put another major on, and they had this major, information system security. So then I studied that, and then I learned. And while I was studying information system security academically, I learned it was a business function. So then I earned the MBA because I said, well, I don't understand business enough, so I earned an MBA. And then I saw that they had a master's in information security course, so I said, well, let me study that too. And some of these classes look the same. So, experiences. Growing up in the street, you learn that if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. So I had to Tarantino this to come back and say, I learned how to game the military system to earn 2 degrees at one time. So I earned 2 bachelor's degrees at the same time. I earned 2 master's degrees at the same time because I learned how to use both pots of money at the same time. Anyway, using some work over here to do some work over here and then wrapping up in the bow. And then finally, it was a choice between going to law school or earning a PhD. And the decision was made for me when they told me I couldn't work my first year of law school. I got a 163 on the LSAT, something like that. Everybody said it was pretty good at the time, and they wanted to give me a scholarship. I said, but you can't work the first year. Now I don't have anybody giving me anything. So, and I'm still in uniform. So then I started the PhD and earned the PhD in information assurance and security. That being said, in order for me to survive in the military, I had to do a few things, which of course brings us back to how I grew up. Things like in order to get my first promotion, they wouldn't send me to a board. So I had to take advantage of the fact that we had entered wartime. We just got into the global war on terror at that point. And I had read in the regulation the worst thing anybody could ever do is give me a rules and regulation book. I'll tell you why in a second. Anyway, I read the regulation and they said during wartime, you can get promoted on what was called a 41A7. It's an administrative promotion. So because at that point, I had a relationship. So I learned how to, this is long, and please tell me if I'm going too long. I learned this growing up, you had, and this didn't matter whether it was in Dominican Republic in the Colmado, or New York City at the bodega, or in Boston at the convenience store. You learn how to make a relationship with your convenience store person. You learn how to make a relationship with your liquor store person. You have to make a relationship with your garbage man, right? You have to learn how to make a relationship with your mailman. I learned all of these things growing up because that is the only way that I would be able to get certain things for my grandmother and for my mom. And I was a little boy going to the store for people. And so I learned how to make relationships because that's the only way they would sell me chewing tobacco and cigarettes and liquor for the people I was buying stuff for. Let's fast forward now. In the military, I learned how to make relationships with HR, with supply, with finance. I learned how to make relationships with all these people. So when it came time for me and they wouldn't let me go to a board, I had a relationship with HR and I said, hey, do me a favor. Yeah, take this 41A7, do an administrative promotion for me. Don't worry, I'll get it signed. I got it signed. This is a recording, so I'm not going to tell you how I got it signed, but it was signed. All right.
If you need some editing, just let me know, Jay. I'll take care of it. It's fine.
Yeah, it was signed. Anyway, that's how I got my first promotion to E5. That's the sergeant. Second promotion, I had to go before a board. This time, once again, I did my whole packet. I had a whole packet that I did, and once again, I got pushback. So I said, "Oh, don't worry, we'll get it signed." Got it signed. Now the promotions after that were all board promotes. I didn't go to board for that. They were all done centralized. So and then my body of work spoke for itself. But in order to get to where I got to, I had to do a couple of other things that lent itself to the second half of my career, which was in offensive security. So once I was able to get educated properly, and then I was able to finagle going to certain service schools and all of that. They put me on to do some offensive stuff. So that's why I ended up in Germany and all those other places, put my hands on keyboards and doing systems work on behalf of the military. So that's how I got into that. Utilizing those skills from when I was a kid that I utilized to get the promotions I wanted to get early on, but then taking that same mindset and then going ahead and breaking in systems and doing all that kind of stuff.
That's wild. Anyway, and I didn't realize you had such a big actually, I did know about your academic background, but we have a powerhouse of academics on this panel, and that kind of rules. Like, I love it.
Well, even to this day, those things that I did, I utilize now. And I want to bring it around to something positive. And I'll say that there's no way in hell, Dr. E, you said this earlier. There's no way, at least you were speaking around it, and I'll say to it directly. There's no way that I'd be able to do any of this without having patience, without being able to have a conversation, right? And realizing that you're never going to change how somebody feels about you, but perhaps you both can come to a consensus on the principles. You're not going to change a position, but you may be able to identify similar principles to unite around. I'll let somebody else speak, man, but there's a whole house analogy I have for how I do what I do too that we can go into later on. Let somebody else get in there.
Okay, I'm going to jump over to, let me see, the next question. Like, Shanae, how did you, I'm going to ask you, like, how do you in the academic space and just in spaces in general, how do you find people who are your group? How do you find groups to bring together? How do you find your people when you're out there, or encourage your people? Like, how does that work for you?
For me, finding my group, like the first groups, can I say it took a while. So coming from the culture where, we basically do things on our own. You don't really like get to there's really like not much of community. It's not like you do things on your own always, but like there's limited community. So like coming from there and coming here, like I really did not know what was available to me. So the first time I actually attended a conference and met like communities like this, I was like, wow, they're actually giving me what I didn't know I needed. Like during conversations or discussions, they're talking about things that you relate to. And I'm just like, you guys get me, like, and I really didn't face the pressure of I have to do something or have to do anything to be there. So that was like how I got into like finding these communities. And then subsequently, I just like tried to Google like groups like that in around me, like in Purdue, like women in anything, women in cybersecurity, in crypto, whatever it is, like around me. Then attend events, like see what's the mission, like how do they like their values, how does it align like with what I want? Then basically from there, I started contributing, started talking. I mean, it took a while for me to start talking, but like with time, I became comfortable, you know, started doing things. And I feel like it has impacted me in a lot of ways because now, I mean, not just that, and people that we worked with in, projects and the OpenSSF community, you can like see firsthand like how I felt, and it kind of like made me aware how it will make other people feel. So it's made me aware of like how to reciprocate this, like when dealing with people from other backgrounds or newcomers. Yeah.
Awesome. Whenever I'm doing one of these sessions or any sort of panel, I always think back. There's an episode of Donald Glover's TV show Atlanta, and they're like, we predict racism will be solved by 2027. They say it's at some point, and it kills me each time in that episode. It's sort of hilarious when they're in Britain. But yeah, finding a group is very important. For me, I'm just going to jump in as well on this one. Yeah, George Floyd year, that's when I helped start a Black Employees Resource Group at the previous company I was at, because there were just a handful of us, Black employees at an international company, and like things were going on and we were trying to process at the same time, but also having people to talk to who would get it in some way. So some small like groups there, and that was a huge win. And I still talk to people from over at that group, even though I'm no longer over there. Dr. E, like, how have you seen, like, from someone outside the tech industry, how have you seen their DEI representation and stuff change over time? Because it's been quite a busy few years, I would say, quite an interesting few years. And like, how have you seen trends move over that time?
I will get to that, but I want to just add a little bit to the previous question first about like how you find your people. Just two big things there. One is we definitely need our people who are within our own demographics, but there may be a lot of things that we share with someone that we can't tell just by looking at them. Like no one looks at me and thinks sci-fi geek. They're looking at somebody who looks like Sheldon Cooper for that. And somebody who looks like me was never a main character on The Big Bang Theory. So that's one thing. But the other big piece is that whenever you're trying to find your community, it's you see them out there and you immediately go over and you introduce yourself and you set up a coffee date, you set up a potluck, you set up a dinner, anything like that to try to get on each other's schedules, and then you're very consistent about it. For me, I also was in that space that was predominantly like nobody that looked like me at all, but then suddenly in graduate school they actually had like a group group of Black women. They were all coming in new in the same year. So we decided, as the few of us that were already in the program, as they were coming in, we were going to immediately grab them and tell them we're all going out, just all of us Black women, like every single Thursday. And we just made them believe that we already did it when we totally didn't. And
Nice,
we are
nice.
still all friends 20 years later. Our kids talk to each other like they're cousins. Like we still go on family trips together. We work for each other because like it's graduate school, so we know each other's work. And we were able to pull in others that we saw around campus that weren't in our program. It's the same thing across departments for corporation, across anything else. You join those ERGs, you find more people that are even more like you within those ERGs. Like you find people that you see and you're just like, hey, let's have some coffee, and then you create consistency around it. And that way, like we ended up, calling ourselves a little something, and that's like our text chain chat now, because then texting wasn't as big of a thing, but now it obviously is. So there's multiple ways to do it. One is don't just look within your demographic, and second, you find those people that are within your marginalized demographic and you hold on for dear life, because it really does depend on it. Yeah, so the next big question had to do with DEI changing over time. DEI always changes over time. When I was little and it was my mom doing some initiatives, she worked for the government, it was called tolerance. And it was called sensitivity training. And there's so many other ways that it changed in between the time when I was young to now. DEI is really just the most recently accepted term for it. But it makes sense that the language around it changes because people change, humans change. I mean, think about when I was little, I was dismayed because there weren't very many representations of people who looked like me in my Saturday morning cartoons, in my like TGIF, television shows that came on Fridays, that Friday sequence of television shows back before streaming was a thing. So that's what made me turn to sci-fi, because that was much greater diversity. Everybody was from a different planet, and we still had to figure it out, and we collaborated well together. But now I realize at least I had a token. If I were like, at least I had like the best token best friend or guest appearance or something like that. Somebody who's trans or non-binary had nobody. So, but now, because culture has changed, we recognize more that there's all of these different sexual orientations, all these different gender identities and whatnot, and they deserve respect and representation too. So we see that more on television. It's not that they're doing like really, really great, but they're doing better and better over time. They're not always villains now, which is great. So we see
early 2000s. I could guess which nationality would be a villain, where they'd be from in the globe.
Yes, and the whole kill your gays trope, like that was a big thing. And it was just like, oh, we see them and now they're dead. And it's just like I mean, for me, I'm more privileged as it comes to sexual orientation and gender identity, but I saw that, and then it's just that because culture ebbs and flows and changes over time, then like the ways that we think about the way that we're going to interact with each other, who we should see, like who we should learn about, the way that we're going to speak to each other, what language is and is not okay, and what's offensive if not, it's going to change over time. So DEI is going to change too. I love the acronym BEAR. It really is my most favorite one that I've seen right now. Although, unfortunately, no one's going to become the VP of BEAR, like when they become the VP of DEI. But one day, maybe. But we just see there's going to be changes. There's going to be different ways that we look at it. Obviously, right now, DEI is a dirty term, and like, people don't want to use it anymore. Some people are encouraging us to instead use like the full like words all out. So literally say diversity, equity, and inclusion, and don't use the acronym, because most of the attacks are on an acronym, and people are like, well, wait a minute, what does it stand for in the first place? And I don't know, is the chat recordings? I'll tell you I'll write in the chat later what my most favorite response was to that, so you don't have to cut it out of this part. But it's really snarky and hilarious, in my opinion. But basically, there's going to be some other way that we refer to it later, but it's still always going to be the same thing. Like when it comes down to it, what DEI truly means, like the fact that it's really just about respect and fairness, like is not going to change. Like as long as there are humans, there's going to be DEI. It's just the actual acronym is going to change. There's still going to be humans. We're still going to have a need for this.
Yeah, it's about equity and things being fair is what this thing's about. And that just reminded me of a comic my friend Chris Straub did, which was on fires and DEI in houses. And I'll find a link to that. I'll post it in here as well. But things have changed so much. Like I'm older than I look, good black don't crack. But when I started in Connecticut, I remember like the VP at our org was like, yeah, we got some new people on our team. They don't look like us, but like we're doing good work. Like the head of the company. And I was like, I'm the only black person on this team. I know there's other nerds on this team, but still, interesting. So things have definitely changed over time. And it's been interesting to watch these conversations grow and change in different spaces, like online spaces into mainstream culture, and all that has been fascinating for me as well. And it's just interesting to watch. Like I live in Oakland, California. It's a pretty political place. I'm going to throw it over to Jay now, though. Like Jay, you were in the military as well. Like things have changed over time
I
as
went to
well.
Westlake.
Oh, Westlake? Yeah, I live in Fruitvale. I can walk to Fruitvale Station is where I'm at. Jay should come visit sometime.
Dr. E, that was that what you put in that chat, that is hilarious. That's a ooh, let's hope the chat's not recorded because we don't need that smoke, but that is
Oh my
something else.
God.
There's a reason I did not say that out loud.
Yeah. Once again, experiences and a love story. When I was growing up, there were two individuals named Peaches and Chocolate. Now, you can tell by the name Peaches and Chocolate that perhaps, just perhaps, they may not be what everyone might seem, right? Peaches and Chocolate were two of the bravest individuals I ever seen in my life. Now, to actually qualify this a little bit, I was always, even as a kid, I used to sit in dark rooms by myself in the middle of the room. My mom used to get scared. She thought I was chanting. I wasn't chanting. I was just sitting in dark rooms. I used to look up at trees and like hear trees and listen to the wind. Like I was a very cognitive of the world around me. So this next part, Peaches and Chocolate were two of the bravest individuals I ever seen in my life. And I would say that as a kid, not because they were, yeah, I mean they fought, but because Peaches and Chocolate were what we'll call today as transgender, right? They were guys, but they were dressed every day as women. And nah, it wasn't pretty. Like they didn't have all the stuff they have today. You could really doll up if you wanted to. Back then, there wasn't all that going on. So these were legit guys, like, but dressed as women, and they were doing the best they can to mimic, and they would talk. It's another. Anyway, what did I learn? What were my experiences? I learned that two individuals like that who are as brave as they taught a couple of other individuals real quick just how brave and how resilient they actually are. And as a kid, I used to watch Peaches and Chocolate, and I'm gonna say this on the recording. This is for the recording. Feel free to cut this out if you want. I used to watch Peaches and Chocolate whip ass. Okay, I used to watch them whip ass. Like this was there was a couple of things that I learned. One, what's different, right? What are the differences? Where do you stop being tolerant? Never stop being patient, but when do you stop being tolerant? What is tolerance? I always thought I learned real quick that tolerance can be a bad word. I'm not going to tolerate you. Tolerate what? No, I'm going to understand. It led me to want to understand them. I knew they were gay, but gay to the point where they would then assume, and then it became, well, what if they actually feel that way? But I know one thing's for absolutely certain, they're not going to let anybody else tell them that they're wrong or call them names or pick on them or anything else like that. No, they're going to body slam somebody. I watched one of them body slam somebody. Okay, that was in heels. Okay. That was phenomenal. Anyway, saw that. Now, in every place I've ever lived, where it was me and people that looked like me, there was always one or two individuals. I remember in New York, in Washington Heights, and this is a very, very small part of Washington Heights, we had that community. But then in Massachusetts, that community, there was one white person and one Asian person, right? And then you grow up and you listen to, everyone's playing together, everyone's talking. Nobody knows what's one person over the other. Nobody knows. Everybody talks the same. Everybody sounds the same. Everybody's having the same shared experience. Fast forward, in the military, when I first got bussed out to schools, I experienced, I was able to do long division and exponents and stuff like that. So I was a very smart with the math. Anyway, the kids didn't like that, so they picked on me and they called me all kinds of names and stuff and kicking me and beating on me and stuff like that. And I spent a large part of my childhood like that. But then when I got into the military, I had a battle buddy, and this was in basic training. And I'll never forget, after a really long stint of training, my battle buddy, he was actually assigned to me as my battle buddy, looked at me and said, he's from Missouri. And I learned later something very unique about Missouri. But this kid was part of that very uniqueness about Missouri. And he looked me dead in my face and said, I don't like you because you're black, but I love you because you're green. Green meaning uniform. He said, I'll get in the foxhole with you any day. So I began to understand something else. You're never going to change it, but that's why I started before. You may never change a position, but you could help to identify around common principles. I don't know where that guy is today, but it let me know straight up, it reminded me of the world I was living in. And two, now that I know, act accordingly, right? And act accordingly doesn't mean tolerance. Act accordingly doesn't mean any of that. Act accordingly means remember who I am and my ability to transcend the narrative and communicate outside of that. I don't know that I care that how you think of me because of my color, but I do care how you think of me and my character, as you should care about how I think of you and your character. Strip away that, which is how I began to understand the difference between racism, bigotry, and prejudice. Those three are different. So all of that to wrap in the bow when it comes to DE&I, or BEAR as we now call it. I think that was so phenomenal when we sat there and came with that. BEAR as we call it today. I think rooted in, you're going to be the only person in some instances, and that's just the nature of the beast. But don't let that be the end of the conversation. We have an opportunity. We have an opportunity to tell a story to tell a story of this is us story, instead of this is me and that's you and you have to understand me and I have to understand you. No, let's understand us for a second, us collectively, right? And I can only do that through my experiences. I couldn't do that any other way. I wasn't, unfortunately and unfortunately, man, I'm an idiot savant. And I say idiot savant because, boy, I walk into some of this stuff and you have to make you have to make a concerted effort when you walk in to say, okay, this is how I'm going to react or not, right? And without any formal education around such matters, what's in my heart at the time, right? And you know, anyway, that's the story. Feel free to ask questions to fill in any blanks. I probably forgetting some stuff.
Janae, have you seen things change over time in the academic space, or like what have you seen?
In the academic space?
I'm going for Janae, not pulling her into because I wanted to give her a
Oh
chance.
hell, I mean, like, well,
Oh,
let's
no, give it to Janae, Jay.
yeah, like so. I'll
Wait,
be
Jay,
quite
let me have
frank. I
Janae
mean, there are a
answer this
lot of
one.
people, huh?
I want to have Janae answer this one. Sorry,
Oh, Janae. Oh, I'm sorry,
yeah.
Janae. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah.
So in the academic space for me, things are improving. I mean, I still feel more needs to be done, but definitely things are getting better. Like right now, like compared to when I started, they are just like more inclusivity, like in a lot of things. Like my school, for instance, they're making a lot of efforts in, providing avenues or like groups or resources. They're just making a lot of things available, and sometimes you might not even just be aware of them. But like recently, I've just been getting a lot of like emails or seeing some posts. Like before, I just haven't been seeing them. So I just feel like it's getting better. There are just a lot of more awareness and resources of people you can always reach out to when I'm passing like different challenges, especially as an international grad student.
We've been talking for most of an hour, and before I open up to questions for everyone, I want to thank our panelists so very much for speaking. Like these are questions and topics that are near, dear, and personal to these people, and we're telling personal stories from our histories and our experiences and lives, and that's hard, and that's the thing to open up for. So, like, thank you very much. I try like early 2020 or whatever, I'm tapped out. I cannot do things right now in terms of the, like, emotional labor situationally. But this is a good conversation, and I'm so glad you were able to join us for this. So thank you very much. I don't know why my video keeps cutting out. That's very annoying. And I will now open it up a little for questions. If anyone wants to talk to the panelists or have any questions for me or OpenSSF even, like I'll give it the last 10 minutes available for that for this office hour session.
We did have a question from Vic earlier in the conversation. I'm not sure if we tackled it. It was around 12:22 p.m. Eastern. She said, I'm curious about how Dr. Eden Renee is navigating D&I conversations with organizations given the current U.S. administration. I'm not sure if we tackled that or if you wanted to mention.
I don't think we did, and I'm happy to jump in on that. Basically, for me navigating the conversation around it, most of the people who are going to reach out to me in order to find out more or sign a contract for me to go into their organization are people who are basically the warm contacts. And so it's positive conversations, but it is always still just like it was before, that just because we have positive like feeling towards wanting diversity, wanting equity, wanting inclusion doesn't mean we know everything. And of course, that's why you would reach out to a consultant anyway, is because you recognize I don't know everything. So for me, it's always just being very compassionate in those conversations, centering the human. I'm the person that's going to be like, okay, well, let's think about this and let's do this together and let's collaborate, rather than a finger pointer is going to tell people, oh no, you're wrong. This is what you need to know. This is what you need to do. I am a professor, but I've never been the sage on the stage type of a person trying to talk at people. I want to talk with people. So those conversations are very important. And as Jay was saying, it is a lot about patience. And also similar to what Jay was saying is that in DEI, one of the things that we have to remember and focus on is that we're not really trying to change minds like people think we are. We need to change behaviors. I just had a conversation with some fellow alum, a small event, and it was another consultant was there saying, well, how do you provide those light bulb moments, like while you're giving a workshop or like while you're leading a meeting and whatnot? I'm just like, well, it's not really about curating somebody else's light bulb moment, because you can't do that. You don't know what that is going to be for somebody else. So you have to be the one that basically pours water on that seed, because you don't know what that's going to be. So you have to give yourself grace for like not being the one that's going to make, blow their mind and everything. That's not your job. You are here to create awareness and to educate. It's important for us to be thinking about how it is that we can be helpful and hopeful. That's the other piece of the conversations that I'm having, is really trying to be another place that people can go to see that the media backlash is not accurate. There's a lot of this, oh, they're dismantling DEI. That's not necessarily true. I like if you look at the company's report on what they actually did, you may find out they may sunset this particular initiative because it informed them about how to do that better. So now they're going to do it this way instead. Or I remember one company said that I think it's the Human Rights Campaign or another group that has this like annual survey type of a thing they want corporations to do to show how equitable they are. Well, the corporation's like, we've gotten like 100% on this every single year. We just need to keep doing what we're doing. We don't need the rubber stamp from an outside entity. That's not dismantling DEI, that's continuing. A conservative group said something about, and I'm not sure the numbers are exactly right here, that 486 of the Fortune 500 all have DEI initiatives. So the the focus on dismantling and don't say DEI and all these different ideas are not actually well represented in the reality of what's happening. People are trying to figure out how to move forward, and that's the conversation that I have is, okay, given the executive orders, what do we need to do in order to be clear as well as legally compliant? Also remembering that the executive orders are not law in the same way that Title IX, Title VII, and other laws are. The executive orders are also not as clear as executive orders are supposed to be. So they're not actually holding up in court every single time something has come to them yet. And so it's really just helping people to navigate landscape.
Awesome. Are there any other chat questions? Let me do a quick scroll.
I did not see any.
Once again, I'm blown away by all the sharing everyone's done in the session. That's fantastic. Like, even I've learned things here. Marcella, fire away with a question.
Yeah, it's I don't think it's gonna be really a five-minute answer, especially if everyone shares,
Filibuster
but
it.
I'll go ahead and just ask, because we asked this at a previous office hour as well, which is how does allyship look to you? Right, and how can folks in not just this community, but just I guess at large be allies to Black folks in these times, especially?
Who wants to go first? I'll open up to the panel. I will volunteer Dr. E.
No, I'm fine going first. It's that I just spoke, so I was trying to, take that moment back. But basically, allyship for me is remembering that you don't get to decide whether or not you are an ally. You need to self-educate as much as possible. Think about the emotional labor that you're putting on other people, and really just do your best job of being supportive. And it's getting outside of your own ideas. I really love the the golden rule versus the platinum rule. Like the golden rule is the one that we're more familiar with, that do unto others as you would like to have done unto you. But that puts the onus of what's okay and not okay and right and wrong and liked and disliked on your perspective, on your mindset, on what you think. So the platinum rule instead says, do unto others as they would like to have done unto themselves. That's allyship to me, because it's on, well, what does this person want? What does this person deem as okay and not okay, and liked and disliked, and appreciated and not? So it's, and I mean, mentorship falls in that too, because you should always stop and think, what would be supportive to this person, instead of saying, oh, you need a mentor, let me tell you everything. You have to listen first. You begin there. So allyship means listening.
I mean, I have a different take on, well, not different. Actually, it's not different at all. I take it to the bridge. I mean, to coin my old school phrases, I take it to the bridge. So I have an analogy I give, and this is anytime I'm asked to talk in front of a room full of people who you know, they have their annual or every 2-year question. What can we do to get better about serving underrepresented communities? And I say, well, let's ask a question. And this is a question for everybody in the room. And then I have something for everybody too. I don't even write around this. So I'll give you what I say. I say, okay, look, there's a 100-yard dash. And in this 100-yard dash, I'm starting off about 25 yards behind the starting line. And you're starting about 50 yards after the starting line. Are you willing to give up 50 so that maybe you can start at the starting line? I don't mind catching up a little bit. Like I said, now that I know better, act accordingly. But are you willing to give up a little bit of your privilege so that you and I both can continue on together? And if you have to think about that and your response is maybe not, then we're not ready to have the conversation about allyship yet. Because allyship really is you giving up a little bit of your privilege. And if that's the way you want to look at it, I don't know that it's a give up of privilege, but you definitely need to expose yourself to others that may not be readily ready to accept underrepresented communities. You have to be able to give of yourself enough to stand with or in front to say, no, this is wrong, and this is what we need to do to fix it. Now, at the same time, I asked the question of Black people in the room that are VPs and everything else, and I have no problem saying this. I say now, before we get into a conversation about how white people can be better, let me ask the Black VPs in the room. All of you have orgs where you are people managing and you have different areas. You already got 200 people in your org or something like that. I don't know, I'm throwing out a number in there. How many Black folks y'all hire last year? If you can't answer that question, or if you don't know, you can't answer that question, or if you can't point to a director, I'm not saying that the idea is to hire specifically. No, you want to hire for the job. You want the right people for the job, period. Full stop. Microsoft does a great job of this, by the way. The interview process in Microsoft is buck wild. It's like, so if you get a job at Microsoft, damn it, you deserve that job, because it is that wild. But we're not talking about whether you deserve the job or not. We're not talking about qualification. I know a lot of people who are qualified in every single racial diaspora, it doesn't matter. But when I ask a Black VP who's in the room talking about the Black condition to white people, and I ask you, how many Black people did you hire, sitting in here talking about, and you can't give me a response? Once again, we collectively aren't ready to tell our white brothers and sisters in the room how they can be better allies, because we haven't gotten our stuff together yet. So I toss it back, I toss it forward. I have no problem doing that either. And that's because I did not have a Black mentor in the tech game until I came to Microsoft in the past year by accident. I have an Indian mentor. I have an Asian mentor. When I say Asian, I mean from China. He still has an accent. I call him Yoda because he says stuff backwards, and you really have to go. You really my ability to listen to this man has evolved over the years. Like, but I did not have a black one and it wasn't because I didn't ask. I need that to be understood. So experiences, right? Run that around again. Really, this is a love story. I keep saying that. I haven't gotten to the love part yet. You guys need to ask me about it later.
Well, we've made it to our full time actually, but I believe the love part's coming. Thank you again so much. This is awesome. Dr. E, I'm going to hit you up on some sci-fi books and stuff, as you know. That's a thing that's just going to happen because I think we have some overlap on that kind of thing. Jay, thank you so much as always. Cheyenne, thank you as well. Like, you are all fantastic speakers. Thank you for joining us. I'll do some post follow-up outreach, but yeah, I have to, I know we have busy schedules and meetings to run to, so I'll just try and wrap it up quickly. So once again, thank you all, and I'll be in contact. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
I forgot where my close is. Lost my mouse.